musical references are scattered throughout your text and sort of reveal specific aspects of each of the characters. Again, another thing with Smoke Signals that sort of resonated for quite a while is the soundtrack and how it was put together. And you know, in respect to Mr. Trudell passing just recently as well, we have the opportunity to explore some of the ways he was involved in musical scenes, things like that. But I think if we had one person to ask you about, I'd want to ask about Hendrix and how he fits into the narratives you've created.
Well, I think he's really only in one.
How did that fit in? What was the...
Well, Jimi Hendrix is big in the Indian world because, you know, he, like many African-American folks, has Native American roots. There were a lot of intermarriages in the South and other parts of the country. I think it was natural in the 19th century and early 20th century for Native Americans and African Americans to find themselves in proximity because of political situations, because of oppression and racism and poverty. And you marry who you're near. So there was a lot more intermarriage. And so Jimi Hendrix descended from Native American and African American histories. And he very much embraced his Native American heritage with the clothes he wore. And I think you could say that the rock stars, you know, the birth of rock music in the 1960s and the hippie movement coinciding, and I think there was a lot of unspoken, unexamined Native American influence. I don't think it's any coincidence that every rock star from 1972 looks like every Native American from 1972. So that's simply part of it. Also, he's from Seattle. He's from the Northwest, so that was part of my growing up history, my awareness. But the big thing is my dad loved him. My dad always played Jimi Hendrix, and my dad would get drunk and lie and tell me he was the only Indian at Woodstock. My dad often had that narrative. I was the only Indian here. I was the only Indian there. And growing up, I knew it wasn't true. Even when he was saying the stories, I knew it wasn't true. But the feeling of being the only Indian, I sort of subconsciously understood in my youth, and I completely understand it now. Because the thing is, as a Native American in the world, it's true. You are almost always the only Indian in the room. And as you get more and more successful, that becomes increasingly true. So the sense of being isolated and alone is a constant for Native Americans. So I think with Jimi Hendrix and my dad's stories about being the only Indian, I think his innate sense of loneliness is what really translated to me. So when I think about Jimi Hendrix, I think about loneliness. And so when I use Jimi Hendrix in my work, and I've used him a few times, particularly in one story, because my father always said he was the only Indian who saw Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock, I think he becomes one of the mass culture, pop culture visions of indigenous loneliness. I mean, the thing is, as a writer, as an artist, you want to think about somebody in a new way. You want to present somebody in a new way. And to present Jimi Hendrix, or to think of Jimi Hendrix as a symbol of indigenous loneliness, I think that's new, and that's from my father.